You're watching Beauty in the Burg Live, produced in association with Arts In, a video platform showcasing artists, arts organizations, and arts and cultural experiences in Pinellas County. Visit creativepinellas.org/artsin to connect with the arts community. Arts In is brought to you by Creative Pinellas. Our mission is to facilitate a vibrant, integrated, collaborative, and sustainable Pinellas County arts community and arts and cultural destination. Creative Pinellas is funded in part by the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners, Visit St. Pete Clearwater, and the State of Florida Department of State Division of Cultural Affairs. Beauty in the Burg is hosted by Cindy Stovall. Our show tonight features authors from Tampa Bay Noir, including New York Times bestselling author Lisa Unger, award-winning author Sarah Gerard, and internationally published author Yuly Restrepo. We'll be answering your questions later in the show, so make sure you post them on the Facebook Live comment thread. And now, the warm, witty, and welcoming Cindy Stovall.
Okay, I unmuted myself, but apparently didn't unmute myself. I'm so sorry. Welcome everyone to Beauty in the Burg. I'm your host, Cindy Stovall. This is our fourth show, and we are going to be talking to some amazing authors from the newly released book, Tampa Bay Noir. And in honor of the centennial celebration of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, honoring suffragettes and women's right to vote, this is going to be an all-female author show, and we are very fortunate to have three really wonderful authors. Two of them are alumni to Beauty in the Burg, and we're going to bring them all on screen together, Lisa Unger, Sarah Gerard, and Yuly Restrepo. There's Lisa. Welcome, Lisa, to Beauty in the Burg once again. Hi, Sarah. Welcome back to Beauty in the Burg. And Yuly, for the first time, welcome to Beauty in the Burg. I'm so glad that you could join us for this chat about this incredible book. I really loved reading it. It was fascinating. How did you guys get involved with this project? We'll start with Lisa.
I heard from Colette, the amazing and wonderful, I should always preface her name with that, Colette Bancroft. And she reached out to me to ask me to contribute to Tampa Bay Noir. And basically, if Colette asks me to do something, I just do it. She says, Lisa, can you? And I go, yes, whatever it is. So yeah, that's how I got involved in the project.
Okay, well, that's easy enough. Isn't it wonderful to have people that you have that much faith in? That?
Yeah, absolutely. I have complete faith in her. Anything that she wants to put on or put together or do, I'm on board because it's always excellent.
How about you, Sarah?
Same story. And I had, as I was saying before the show, been working on an article that was very much like a noir story. And I couldn't finish it as a nonfiction piece. So I just repurposed all of that material, and it was the perfect occasion. So many thanks to that.
And you have a little bit of a noir sensibility, kind of, to some of your writing, I think. Would you agree with that? Or, I mean, I know it's
dark at times, dark, gritty, yeah, in the street.
Which I love about your style, definitely. And Yuly, again, welcome. I'm so happy to have you as a first-time guest on Beauty in the Burg. How did you get involved with Tampa Bay Noir?
Well, I also got an email from Colette, but I didn't know her before this. I didn't know her personally. I knew her as the editor of the book book section of the Times. But she got in touch with me through one of my colleagues, Erica Dawson, who is an amazing poet. She recommended me for the book. So that's how it started.
And I should mention that Tampa Bay Noir is part of a series of books. All right, now tell me what's the right way to pronounce the editor. Is it AKA Chic or is it?
Akashic. It's
Akashic, okay.
Or Akashic.
Akashic.
See, okay. I was the only one that was confused about that. But so they're doing kind of a series of these noir books across the nation. So I think
World,
that
I think
internationally
as well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
so, and I love that we get to recognize ourselves in these stories. Do you find yourselves in these really weird times, you guys? Are you more creative? Are you writing more, or is it getting in your way somehow, even though you're spending more time at home? How has the current climate impacted your writing, if at all? Lisa.
Well, for me, writing has always been an escape hatch. I've been writing since I was a kid. So it's kind of the place where I go to escape chaos and to metabolize chaos. So in that way, it's been very comforting, a very soothing place for me to be like, sort of in my work and in the manuscript that I've been working on for next year. And so it has, and also a little bit, I don't want to make light of it, but I'm kind of an extreme introvert. So quarantine is not
an unusual state of being.
The worst thing that ever happened to me. I'm just going to put it out there. But, obviously this is a dark time for many people, and to even be able to say that is kind of a luxury. And, people are suffering. So it's not like I'm making light of it, but, for a creative who
first world problems, right?
Right, exactly. And so for a creative who kind of, needs solitude, to sort of recharge my batteries, it has been a time of, tremendous creativity for me. And definitely that's the place where I have gone to kind of either just escape or also to metabolize some of the the things that are happening in the world.
Right. How about you, Sarah?
I'm also an extreme introvert. So but I'm also living with my family right now. My partner is also a writer, Patty Cottrell, and we were living in the greater New York City area when the pandemic hit, and our lease was just about to expire. So we didn't want to go apartment hunting before, in the midst of a pandemic. And so we came down to Florida as we kind of escaped New York City. And it's been interesting. I know that certainly my creative practice has had to adjust, but nothing stops me. So, and actually, I guess like Lisa, I've been kind of using it as a way to process a lot of what I'm feeling. And I finished a long-term project and I'm in another one right now. And all of my projects center on social justice causes. So it feels important to me to be able to do that right now.
And you almost have an opportunity to focus.
Right. Yeah. In a way. I have to guard my mental capacity. I have to not look at my phone first thing in the morning. Actually, I've been journaling first thing in the morning instead of.
That's actually extremely good advice. I think I will take that, because
we
all do that, don't we?
It really is. It's like a way to train your attention for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Yuly?
I'm also an introvert. And so after I started teaching online in March, I quickly realized that it wasn't that different from my regular life. So I worked on a short story over the summer. I wrote a rough draft of it. It turned out to be 60 pages, but I tend to overwrite, so I know it's going to be shorter when I get to it again. But aside from that, I haven't had time to write because I am in the process of hopefully getting promoted at work. So I had to put together a packet of everything I've done in the last 5 years.
Congratulations. That's
Oh,
wonderful.
thank you.
It's probably a dumb question to ask writers, right? As a writer myself, I do so much of that at home. For me, like you all, this hasn't really felt all that tremendously. I mean, like, obviously there are things, but I've done so much of my work from home anyway. It's not really that weird.
Yeah.
But I asked you guys this question before we went on the air to give you a chance to think about it. And then we'll move on to our individual readings. But we talked about in real life, if anything noir-y has ever happened to you guys. So we'll start with Lisa on that one. Your own personal noir story.
Personal noir story. Well, it's kind of interesting that you should ask it like that, because it's sort of in the writing, it's something, I guess it becomes noir, but in the occurrence, it's something in our lives. I think, the things that kind of form us as writers, or that, we wind up metabolizing on the page, it doesn't really, the experience itself might be very dark, which in my case it was. I grew up in sort of a suburban town, like a semi-rural, semi-suburban town outside of New York City. And it was like the kind of place where you were moved by your parents to be safe, like the kind of town where nothing bad ever happens. And when I was 15 and I was in high school, a girl that I knew, she wasn't a close friend, but she was a friend. She was abducted and murdered.
Oh no.
And it was a horrific tragedy, just a terrible moment, obviously for her family and for the town. And for me, it just sort of, I can really pinpoint that moment as like, before that, I saw the world as one thing. And after that, I saw it as something else. And I had a lot of questions about people, what makes us who we are. Is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it some sort of impossibly complicated helix of those two things?
That's the one I go for.
Exactly. I think that's the one everyone's going for these days. And so I really marked that moment. I'd always had a very dark imagination and had a lot of questions, but I marked that moment as sort of, one of the main things that formed me as a crime fiction writer.
Informed your future
now,
as a writer.
Those
right?
questions drive my fiction. So
Right.
I would say that's probably the moment.
That's pretty noir-y stuff, Lisa, for sure.
Yeah.
Sarah, how about you? There's so much edge and grit to so much of what you write. I imagined you having an interesting answer to this.
Well, the thing that I thought of first earlier, I wasn't sure that I could talk about, so I'll tell you the second one, which is
Be mysterious.
a friend of mine died in January, and for several months I completely lost my mind and
So sorry.
Thank you. And thought that she had been murdered, and actually became I kind of took it upon myself to investigate what had happened. So I went around, and I'm a journalist, so I'm putting on my my hat, and I'm going in there with my notepad and was interviewing people that she used to work with, and and turning information over to the police. And it totally, like Lisa said, completely, there was a before this event, and then there was an after, in my life. And I mean, and I'm writing this book now, but not, I wouldn't say it's a noir, but it's it's very much a mystery, and I treated it as a mystery. And it I don't want to tell you how it ends, but
no, don't do
but
that.
It completely shaped how I saw the world. Everybody was in, I felt this ever-present danger, as if somebody would find out what I was doing. And I was in a very, very dark place for a while. So it is, it's like it didn't, not that I was thinking of it as a noir story when it was happening to me, but there was a really persistent darkness that would characterize if I were to write it, how I wrote it.
I probably would have thought the same thing as you did, since with COVID, I have developed this sudden weird obsession for forensic files and Dateline and, and all things that I really kind of never watched before, but now I watch constantly. I have no explanation for this.
Lisa, your story about the girl being murdered in high school reminds me of Michelle McNamara. I'll Be Gone in the Dark. Did you see that documentary?
I haven't
Sure.
seen it yet. I have been like hesitating to watch it because I wanted to read the book, and then I find her story so personally kind of heartbreaking that I've found myself like I have like right now in this moment like maybe the opposite of you, Cindy. Like I just want to watch like funny things. Like when we do watch TV, I just want to,
Got you.
you know, kind of have
Escape.
that lightness. But I'm really dying to watch that, and I'm just waiting to feel a little bit more like solid before before I do. Was it fantastic?
It was fantastic, and she had the same experience that I think it was a girl in her neighborhood, though, not her high school, but a girl
Oh,
in her
wow.
neighborhood when she was in high school was murdered, and it's the reason that she became a crime writer.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, I really definitely need to dive into that.
Yeah.
And me as well. Yuly, what's your noir story? And then we'll move on to our individual readings.
So I was gonna tell the story of being mistaken for a drug dealer, but your responses made me think sort of like you both were talking about it in terms of, you know, having this experience and feeling like there was a before and an after. And for some reason, it was never like that to me. Just, you know, growing up in Colombia with all the violence that was around in the 80s and 90s, it was just kind of always there. And you knew that, you know, something could happen to you. And it did happen to some of my family members, but it's just something that everybody kind of learned to live with. But I did get mistaken for a drug dealer a couple of years ago when I was back there.
Yeah, that would not be a comfortable thing.
No.
So thanks you guys for engaging in the opening discussion, the three of you. And now we're going to hear some of your stories, which I got to tell you, I absolutely loved. So we're going to start with Lisa Unger. And we're going to bring up, I think the first slide, just as an introduction to the story. And while we're bringing up that intro slide, it just has the title of the story. Lisa, tell us, just introduce us to it, and then go ahead and start your reading.
Okay. Yeah, so my story is called Only You, and it's about a tech billionaire who returns to his hometown to sort of settle up the past and you know, sort of try to rekindle an old love.
I told you yesterday, and I absolutely believe this, for me, it's a new age, Wuthering Heights at the beach with an Xbox. So
Perfect.
that's how I'm qualified. And now I'm going to take myself off the screen so that you can read from Only You, Lisa Unger.
Okay. You, long limbs graceful, incandescent in the moonlight. The surf lapping, lazy and warm against the sugar shore, the sky a void. Stars dancing, galaxies spinning, light years ago, their glimmer reaching us only now when it's far too late. Our toes disappear in the silken sand, salt on our skin. You're so still, so near, but always out of reach, even now. You shouldn't have come back here. Was it just a week ago now? You, surprised to see me. Why would you come back here, Scotty? But you already knew the answer. There's only ever been one question, one answer between us. Silly, isn't it? When the universe is so vast that the only important things are so small. This place is apart, a world separate from the rest of it. Didn't it always seem like that to you? Even when we were younger and we didn't know anything else? We'd never been anywhere really. We were just Florida kids, living in bathing suits and flip-flops, always dragging a damp towel or a fishing rod, or a bucket filled with shells, or some long-suffering sea creature we promised to return to the wild, and sometimes did, and sometimes didn't. You, a sylph in a simple black sheath that draped off your thin shoulders, the gossamer strands of your hair cut blunt and elegant, shaping your jaw, your eyes a question sharp accusation. That night, just a week ago, you weren't happy to see me. He walked up behind you, broad where you are narrow, dull where you are bright, that possessive hand at the small of your back. You turned and smiled at him, the glare you had for me all but fading. Oh, honey, you said, voice going soft, pleasing. You remember Scott, don't you? His smile seemed earnest, blue eyes slanted as if searching memory. Oh, right, from the summers. Hey, good to see you, man. You look great. That's right, from the summers. We all grew up here. Your father and his, founding members of this yacht club. My father, the bartender, forever. These days, maybe we'd call him a mixologist. But then, he was just Brian. Slow smile, the easy way he had with that shaker, the guy who can make anything they wanted and happily would. Wait a second, he said, reaching out a hand. Vineyard Vines Oxford, Brooks Brothers blazer, Rolex dangling. Oh, please. All the stories we try to tell each other with our possessions. Scotty Rader, right? I waited for him to add the bartender's kid or the camp counselor, something like that, something to make me small. They always try to do that, make you less than who you have become. I readied myself with a polite smile, returned his firm grip. Holy cow, he said instead, running a hand over the close crop of his blonde hair. I heard you're killing it. Your software company, gaming, right? Enigma is the big one, isn't it? Puzzle. His openness, his sincerity, it took me aback. That's right, I offered him a nod. And you, a surgeon, right? A smile I recognized, a faux humble squint. Hey, you need a new hip? I'm your man, he said with a grin that was almost self-deprecating. I think I'll try to hold on to the originals, I answered, patting my pockets. I'm a big fan of the light banter that's always so easy here. Words slip off the tongue, polite laughter bubbles like sparkling wine. That's a good plan, he said with a practiced chuckle. The conversation, or one just like it, has been uttered 1,000, 1,000,000 times within these walls. The bar top glistened, the music, jazz, Charlie Parker maybe, ambient. Glasses, bottles stood sentry on shelves. Jewelry dangled on delicate necks and ears, wrists glimmering. You, stiff, shoulders tense. Your smile was brittle, your eyes glazed with impatience. Body turned just slightly toward the door. You couldn't wait to move away from the conversation. Good to see you again, Scott, you said. I'm afraid we're late to join our friends. Just shy of rude. Cold, certainly. Not like you at all. He looked at you quickly, questioning, then nodded, the well-trained husband. Your fingers laced through his, and he gently led you away, casting a glance back. I offered him a farewell wave. Bradley, the one you married. I wonder if he remembers, or if he ever knew that you and I were in love once, about a light year ago. The house, the one I'm building here, it will be the biggest by far in the county, directly on the sand of North Clearwater Beach. 9,000 square feet, 10 bedrooms, 8.5 bathrooms, a 33-foot high entry foyer, 5 balconies, a gym, a meditation space, a formal dining room that has more square footage than the house where I grew up just miles away. A gleaming state-of-the-art conference room. The master suite will overlook the infinity pool, which will appear to flow seamlessly into the ocean waters beyond. A restaurant-grade kitchen with gleaming Sub-Zero Wolf appliances. Another smaller family kitchen. The impractical but oh so gorgeous marble from Italy for all the countertops. Sauna, steam room. It's obscene, really. Absolutely bloated. It will be nestled here in this tiny gated section of the beach where gigantic homes sit, oblivious to the state of the planet on a tiny slip of land between the Gulf of Mexico and the Intercoastal Waterway. I thought you were a minimalist, mused my father, in his late 70s now. He's long retired, living comfortably nearby. He loaned me $200,000 to start my business, and let's just say it was a good investment for him. My mother didn't live to see what I'd made of myself. She passed, as you know. That's the last time I saw you, at her funeral. I saw you in the back of the crowded church, dabbing at your eyes. You loved her, and she you. You offered your condolences, stiff and distant. I am a minimalist, I told him. It's the only house I need. Other than the apartment in Manhattan? Well, I tried to get him to move in, but he wouldn't. I don't want to live in a museum, son. The old man is so practical, so down to earth. I think the house actually embarrasses him. It's so much, Scotty. Why do you want it so big? Because honestly, that's all some people ever understand.
I love it. I love it. And see, your point of view is so interesting where the protagonist, Brian, is always just saying you. And after a while, you know exactly who that is. He might not ever say her name, but you know exactly who he's talking about. And like Heathcliff, he goes from being a bartender to this, you know, well, stable boy slash bartender,
Right.
to this big tech mogul coming back home to, you know, moon over his long lost love. And then things happen.
And things
So
happen as
you're
they
going to
as
have to
they
buy
are.
the book to find out.
Yes, exactly.
But I do love it. I really do, Lisa.
Thank you. I
But
love writing about it. I love writing about Florida, which I don't always do. It's lately sort of started to leak into my work. I mean, and I've always sort of thought, well, I'd have to leave Florida in order to write about it, you know, because it's almost like when you're in it, you can't write about it. But I feel like now it's like some of the things that are so meaningful to me and so, you know, that I'm passionate about, especially about the environment in Florida. I feel like that stuff is starting to find its way into my fiction in a really organic way.
right. And just your love for it.
Yes,
Sneaks
absolutely.
in, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's look at the next image, and we can talk a little bit about your upcoming book because it's very exciting. It's going to be released in October. Confessions on the 745. Oh, you know what? This is the next one. I wanted to ask you about this because
Okay.
in doing some research about you, pardon me, I'm going to back up a little bit. I found this article, and I just thought that this was fascinating. Here is this, you know, this well-known author. She's writing her list of her top 20 best thrillers, and we're talking about The Talented Mr. Ripley and The Silence of the Lambs, and The Red Hunter is on that list. And that was the first one of your books I read, which I loved. How does something like that make you feel? I mean, aside from, you know, you're on the bestseller list, you see the awards and the accolades and stuff, but to have your work compared in that way, I just thought was.
I mean, it's an honor, of course. I mean, whenever you see, you know, like, so all of us are readers first, right? I mean, this is where we fall in love with story in the pages of somebody else's book. And so I'm still like a massively passionate, like sort of geeked out reader. You know, I just love books, and you know, there are books in my life that, you know, have just changed me and that I feel, you know, super just attached to, and you know, the characters and the stories are part of, you know, part of who I am as a person and as a writer. So when I, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so you name two of yours since we were.
I would say, well, Patricia Highsmith, you know, she's on that list, the author of The Talented Mr. Ripley. I mean, she's probably one of the greatest crime fiction writers that ever lived. She wrote, you know, Strangers on the Train, and you know, a lot of other things that, you know, become known as like comes known as a Hitchcock film. But she, you know, she was the writer. The Talented Mr. Ripley is another one, along with, you know, just a slew of really stellar, beautiful novels. And the other author for me is Truman Capote. So he was like where I fell in love with language. And then, you know, his book In Cold Blood, which is probably the first true crime novel, I think is, you know, a book that very much so informed me as a crime writer. But then, you know, when you see, when obviously when a writer you admire, you know, puts your name on a list with authors that, you know, you have admired and, you know, sort of come up with, it's always very, you know, it's always very moving, very touching. I'm very grateful to.
And that was why I brought it up. I guess I kind of imagined how I would feel if someone had said that about something, you know, a piece of my work. So I just wanted to mention it. So let's go to the next image and let's talk about the upcoming release of Confessions on the 745. What can you tell us about that? We're gonna bring up that
image. Right here, like every good author should have a copy of we should have a copy of her book.
Even better. Well, we're bringing up the slide too because your last book, The Stranger in has just gone to paperback. So we wanted to make sure everyone knew that. And they can go to
Exactly.
writershouse.com or on your website, lisaunger.com, to find those.
Yeah, lisaunger.com is the place where you'll find out everything you ever wanted to know about me and my books, or everything you didn't even know that you wanted to know about me. It's on there. Well, Confessions on the 745 releases on October 6th, and it is loosely inspired by Strangers on the Train. And at the beginning of the book, we meet a young mom. She's had a really horrible day. And so, of course, when she gets on the commuter train home, it stalls, it dies on the tracks. And she's sitting there in the dark next to a stranger. And this young woman strikes up a conversation with a surprising confession. And this leads Selena, maybe it's just the horrible day that she had, or maybe it's the drink that she shouldn't have had, but it leads her to confess a secret of her own. And then the train starts to move. They're both headed back into the world, into reality. And Selena is very embarrassed. She thinks to herself, why did I tell this stranger on the train this secret that I've never told anyone else? And she hopes that she's never going to see this young woman ever again. But of course, she will.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah.
No, that's an excellent teaser. And of course, I want it. So
you get your copy yet? I'm sure.
No, not yet, but I'm excited to get it. And then of course, we'll plan another show in the future to talk about it. I would love that.
Perfect. Yeah, I would love that too.
Lisa, thank you so much for sharing Only You with us and for telling us about Confessions on the 745. Everyone go to lisaunger.com. And also any other social media you want to share with
yeah, I mean, I'm everywhere. It's author Lisa Unger on Facebook, it's LA Unger on Instagram, and I think it's just Lisa Unger on Twitter. Like, honestly, I'm everywhere. So, come and say hi, and visit my website. All the latest news is always there. And if you sign up for my newsletter, then you get a free short story.
I love it. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming back to Beauty in the Burg.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Always. Okay, so next we're going to hear a reading from Sarah Gerard from her piece in Tampa Bay Noir, The Midnight Preacher. So let us bring Sarah back on. And her website is sarah-gerard.com, because there is another sarahgerard.com website. So make sure that you include the dash so that you can find her. Okay, Sarah, you ready?
I'm ready.
Do you want to lay any groundwork for it, or?
I'm just going to start from the beginning. And as I said earlier, this began as a piece of journalism that I was writing about a local preacher who had become quite notorious. And I became a little obsessed with him in the days after Trump's election for reasons that become clear in the story.
Love it. Okay. I'm going to step away. This is Sarah Gerard with The Midnight.
Okay. The Victory Motors building was squat and run down, the windows partially covered with thick styrofoam panels painted electric blue, molding and crumbling, or covered in plywood or a crosshatched layer of plastic. A low overhang provided shade. Two long, narrow signs taped near the top of the windows read, "In His Name," in a 70s color palette and retro computer font. A sign on the door read, "No trespassing, violators will be shot, survivors will be shot again." Another, illustrated with a human target, read, "We don't call 911. I was looking for the live crusade, particularly for Buck Hill, who used to have his studio in the back office of Victory Motors. The televangelist had disappeared from the airwaves and internet without a trace 2 days after the election of Donald Trump, a week prior. I'm a freelance writer and had convinced the Tampa Bay Times to let me look into the situation. A stack of printed out articles and emails sat just inside the front window with a Post-it on it that read Trump Stuff File. The article on top was dated 2013 and attributed to capitalist evangelist radio host Wayne Allen Root, who had variously aligned himself with the Republican, Libertarian, and Tea parties and endorsed Trump in the 2016 presidential race. The door was ajar. At the sound of the bell, a tiny, frail-looking old man emerged from the back office. I assumed this was Clive Waters, owner of the car lot, whom I had read about in an old issue of the Times. Waters had donated the office space to Hill, explaining, "I like what he's doing. 1/3 of the population is up at that hour anyway. Better they find Buck than temptation." There appeared to be no one else at Victory Motors that day, save for a long-haired cat asleep on a rolling chair. I asked Waters if Buck was there. It took a moment for him to understand that I was talking about Hill. "He hasn't lived in St. Petersburg or had his office here in several years," he said. Indeed, there was no remnant of a production studio in sight. I informed him that Victory Motors was still listed as the Live Crusade headquarters. "We collect Buck's mail for him and send it down to Naples," he said. "Is Naples where he's living now?" "He moved down there some years ago." I waited for him to explain, but he didn't. "I guess he outgrew this space," he said. He looked at me suspiciously. I smiled to reassure him that, as an attractive young woman, I was no one to fear. Usually, a smile was enough to convince people to give me information. "Do you know why he stopped broadcasting recently?" I said. I decided to follow this with, "Is he okay?" Clive relaxed. "Maybe he's getting ready to do something big," he said. I looked around the Victory Motors office again. The state of disrepair suggested no one was doing any business there anymore. I thanked Clive for his time and left, heat waves warping the asphalt back to my car, crosshairs at my back. More interesting than where Buck Hill had disappeared to was why I wanted to know in the first place. I suppose I wanted to come face to face with hate. In the days after Trump's election, like many, I spiraled. I started drinking again after 2 years sober. I broke up with my boyfriend, whom I suspected of voting for the wrong side. I locked myself inside a room at the Gateway Motel, advertising jacuzzis and free adult movies. I refused to answer the phone. I called in sick to my part-time barista job, claiming I had the flu. Whenever I made eye contact with someone on the street, I wondered whether they were responsible for the rise of evil. I ate pickled pig's feet from the gas station, figuring, if they want me to die, then fine, I will. I derived a sick pleasure from imagining someone discovering my body. It rained for days. Thankfully, the Gateway had wireless internet. I couldn't tear myself away from the bad news. I had never heard of Buck Hill until I saw his name on the Southern Poverty Law Center website. I had gone there trawling for hate groups I could infiltrate and explode from the inside. This delusion had become my lifeline. Live Crusade was listed among the 63 active hate groups in Florida. There was the Supreme White Alliance, the Daily Stormer, the Nation of Islam, and the New Black Panther Party. Then there was the Live Crusade, just a mile away from me, listed under general hate. Buck's anti-Muslim vitriol, racism, and homophobia had earned him the designation. I'll stop there.
So what made you want to go to that 34th Street corridor kind of, that is a noir place in our community for sure.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I was living in St. Petersburg for a year while I was teaching at New College. I was the writer in residence there for the 2018-2019 school year. And Patty and I had moved back down to St. Petersburg, where we had friends and, electing to live there instead of in Sarasota, where we didn't know anyone. And I would drive by it every day. I would just drive by those motels, and I knew there was a story there somewhere. And when Colette reached out to me, it gave me a reason to set something there. The story that I had been researching, that I'd been reporting on about the televangelist, didn't really have a setting because I was actually looking for him. I was like kind of on the hunt for him because he had disappeared, and I did want to uncover where he went, and so I just kind of it seemed very natural for me to tell the story in the first person as a reporter, which is a perfect noir character, you know, and to just set the story there at those hotels because I'd wanted to be there anyway. So I just started swinging by and like jotting down details, you know, free adult movies, free Wi-Fi.
Right.
Yeah.
I love how you know, mix the politics into it and how it contributed to the dark mood, and also how the life of this writer was almost, you know, was really almost as dysfunctional and seedy as the person she was looking for. So
Indeed.
no,
Yeah.
rather,
Actually,
so that was, I thought, also a fascinating element.
the challenge for me was humanizing Buck Hill, because I can, you know, I can go on and on about why he's a despicable character, you know, but that's very one-dimensional. So I had to find some way for the protagonist of the story, Andrea, to relate to him. So yeah, I did end up highlighting those seedier aspects of her life, you know, and
Yeah, well,
what is it about him that touches her, that touches a nerve in her, you know?
a
Yeah.
definite sympathetic element creeped in there, so you succeeded.
Thank
You
you.
really did. Okay, so let's talk about, we've got a slide coming up, because first of all, the last time you were on the show, we talked about the Sunshine State, which, so you've been entrenched in telling stories about our area for
Mhm.
some time, and it recently got a great distinction. And of course, I wrote it down and now can't find it. So, an award or something. What has the Sunshine State achieved? I will let you announce it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it was a New York Times Editor's Choice, which was
That's it.
I was honored, very honored. And the Times got behind the book in a couple different ways, and I was really, really happy about that. And it was long listed for a Penn Diamondstein Spielvogel Award for the art of the essay, which it's a great honor because Penn America does just incredible work. And then it was shortlisted for a Southern Book Prize, which is a book-selling prize. So I love independent bookstores, and I mean, anytime I can make a bookseller happy, I'm happy. So.
Yeah. Well done, you. Congratulations. I loved the book. It's in my collection. I go back and that's what I love about short stories, is that they're a little bit almost more accessible. You can go back and read one that you especially liked, and you know, so I kind of like that about it.
There's some noir elements in that book too, a conspiracy that I had uncovered at a certain point, and some evil characters for sure.
That's right. So if we can bring that that image back, let's talk about the upcoming book, True Love, which was released in, oh, it's the one before, it's, there you go, which was released in July. So it's only been out for a month. Tell us about that.
It's a dark comedy, a satire of whiteness, toxic masculinity, artistic striving, gentrification, and takes place between Florida and New York.
So
So
basic life as both of us really know it.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes place in the between 2014 and 2016, and it ends just after the election of Donald Trump.
Incredible. All right, so what I have another image, but I want to make sure that everyone knows the sarah/gerard.com, and where can I had listed another. There you go. Oh, you are a wonderful person. Okay. Moth to Mouth.
Yeah.
Instagram, Sarah #4 on Twitter,
Yeah.
sarah/gerard.com, and there are links to be able to get all your books and stories there. And then the last thing I want to talk about, Sarah, is, you know, for people who aren't familiar, you're also an incredible visual artist.
Thanks.
So I want to give some, and how active are you in that right now? Are you writing more? Do you still find time for your visual art and collages?
I haven't been collaging as much during the pandemic because I've been really deep into this book that I've been reporting on for 4 years now, and it's just kind of picked up. I'm trying to use this downtime to finish a proposal for a book. So I have not, and I don't have a dedicated writing collaging space in the house. There are cats in this house, so
Mm.
it's kind of hard because there are tiny little
You want to
pieces of
integrate
paper.
the hairs into your work.
It's like you can't get cat hair out of the way, and you also can't stop them from knocking all your little pieces off the table. And so it's been a little hard here, but I would like to. Patty and I are looking for a house right now. We're also newlyweds, and living with your family is a newlywed.
I wanted to say congratulations. I just love Patty. She's awesome.
No, I love Patty too.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So we're looking for a house, and in that house, I will have a dedicated space to do my
Beautiful.
actual art.
But there's still work available on your website for people to buy if they want to, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sarah, thank you so much for sharing the amazing story, for sharing your beautiful work. Everyone, make sure that you get your copy of True Love. And while you're at it, get Sunshine State as well. It's a great compilation. True Story is a novel, and Sunshine State is a compilation of short stories. So thank you, Sarah, for coming back to Beauty in the Burg. I love you, and I'm so glad that you were with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And so now we are going to hear the next story from Yuly Restrepo, and it's called Pablo Escobar. And what I love about this story, well, I'm just going to let you, Yuly, set the stage for us, but it so well describes or helps us understand, those of us in this area. You not only describe life here, but life from where you came from, which you do in such a way that you really feel it. So set the stage for us.
Thank you, Cindy. So I'm going to read from about the midpoint of the story. In the first part, the narrator, who is a young Colombian girl who has just migrated to the States with her family, makes a friend at school, her first American friend. And in this passage that I'm going to read, she is at the beach with her friend, whose name is Nicole, and Nicole's dad.
All right, so here we have Pablo Escobar with Yuly Restrepo.
Thank you. Okay. Indian Rocks Beach was one of the hottest places I'd ever been. There was nowhere to hide from the light here. Even in the late afternoon, the air smelled of sulfuric heat, just as it had on the day we landed in Miami after our flight from home. On that day, as we drove up that lonely 4-hour stretch of highway to Largo, to the apartment we'd be kicked out of a month later, we could see waves of heat rising up from the pavement. Before Jake brought me and Nicole to this beach, I had only been to Clearwater Beach once, when my aunt had brought me and my mom to eat ice cream by the pier. Mine was promptly stolen away by a seagull. That had been when my mom didn't have any job at all, and we all still pretended my aunt didn't have a drinking problem. We played the game of getting along while I slept until noon every day and told myself repeatedly I liked this quietude, hoping the day would come when I'd believe it. Now, Nicole, her dad, and I sat on towels on top of sand, coarsened by millions upon millions of shells, and I wondered why the only people in the water were parents with their young children. Otherwise, we were surrounded by a few older people, often sitting in pairs on beach chairs and reading magazines or thick paperback novels. Nicole's dad said all of them lived in the condos that lined the shore behind us, their pastel facades a rainbow. Most of them only come in the colder months, so a lot of those apartments are empty now, he said. It gets pretty cold up north, but some of them moved down here for good. I'd like to own one of these myself when I get older. I wondered how anyone could afford these beachfront properties in the first place, let alone a second winter homes. I couldn't understand how I was here now, surrounded by luxuries I'd seen in movies, when only a few months ago our neighbors had pooled money so we could pay our power bill, so my mother could cook dinner and I didn't have to do my homework by candlelight. It was hard to understand how these places were within reach now, but I still had to wonder whether we'd make rent next month. I don't think I'll ever live in one of them, I said, pointing behind me. Sure you will, Jake said. Anyone that comes to this country gets the same chance. The air smelled like the older people who moved here wanted to be burned alive. Nicole had slathered on an oily lotion that smelled of coconut. She lay on her back with a towel covering her face, not saying much. Jake asked me a few questions about my family, like where in Colombia we were from and why we'd come to the States and how we'd ended up in Largo. There was so much I could have told him about those candlelit nights that came after the men who'd killed my uncle started directing their threats my dad's way, so his usual clients wouldn't do business with him anymore for fear of ending up like my uncle. I could have talked about the block parties the neighbors threw at Christmas time, about getting up at 4 a.m. to take the bus to the metro so I could be on campus in time for my 6 o'clock English class, and how sometimes I didn't have money for the fare and couldn't go. There was so much I wanted to tell him, so much that got stuck somewhere between my brain and my tongue, so I just said the things I knew how to say. Oh, Medellin, Jake said. Pablo Escobar, right? I smiled and nodded, holding in a sigh. He took a sip of his light beer and readjusted his black baseball hat. His brown eyes glinted in the inescapable sunlight. His face was covered in wheat-colored, scraggly hairs that didn't do much to protect him from the sun. I hadn't seen him put on any sunscreen. I've read all about that guy, he said. He was a bad guy, I said. Oh, no doubt, but I've read all these articles online about all the money he stashed in all these places that people still haven't found. I mean, it's been like 6 years since he died and no one has found it. That's awesome. But that shootout where he died was crazy, right? He slapped his thigh. The photo of all the soldiers posing with his corpse on that rooftop, that's hardcore. I'm pretty sure I have it somewhere at home if you want to take a look at it. I'll stop there.
I love this story, and I could feel you in it because the young girl, it's kind of a little bit of a tween story. And yet it also has all the makings of one of the shows that I would see on Forensic Files for sure. Buy the book and you'll find out why. But you feel the adjustment that this young girl has to make being an asylee from Medellin, Colombia, which you've been here 20 years. What was the adjustment like for you, Yuly?
Well, I think those parts of the story are definitely autobiographical. It was just initially very hard for me to adjust because I was just so shy at, when I came to this country, and even though I knew a lot of English by then, it was just really hard for me to speak it. The landscape was also something that I had to get used to. I grew up around surrounded by mountains, and Florida is just flat. So that was different for sure. But also Florida just felt, or I guess the US in general just felt just a lot quieter than what I was used to.
So is that a good thing or a bad thing, or is it like kind of like a soldier returning from a war zone to
I think it just depends. It can be a good thing in the sense that it's peaceful, but also there's this, I don't know, I feel like that passage I read about the neighbors pooling money to help this family pay for their power bill maybe wouldn't happen here. Maybe that's a bad thing to say, but
no, well, it can sometimes, but it isn't the first instinct,
right?
Because it isn't necessarily the common necessity. So where it's the kind of situation where it comes up all the time, these kind of workarounds have already been worked out because it's the common way, right?
Right, exactly. And yeah, I think there's more sort of like neighborly involvement
Sure.
Down there.
To
Yep.
kind of a wider, broader support system.
Yeah.
And it just shows to go you that, I mean, there are positives and negatives to whatever situation you find yourself in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Well, we're so glad to have you here.
Thank you.
And let's bring up the next image, because I wanted to ask about this sketch, and I wanted to ask you about your work at University of Tampa.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You shared with us, you're an assistant professor in the English department, and you shared with us that you just got a promotion. So
Well,
congratulations.
not yet, but hopefully soon.
Okay. Oh, should I have not said that?
No, that's fine. It's fine.
I just, the minarets of UT, my son actually went to that school and graduated there. So I have a real attachment. And I wanted to ask about that sketch because it's just cool.
Oh, the sketches. I had the opportunity to be at an artist residence like 3 years ago. It's called McDowell, and it's up in New Hampshire. And basically, they give you a place to write, and they bring you meals to your studio every single day, and it's basically paradise. So you are surrounded by all kinds of artists of all disciplines. I mean, there were architects there were choreographers, but the sketch is of me and my friend Oscar, who is another writer, and it was drawn by another artist at the colony or at the residence.
Thank you. So you've had stories published in many amazing places, Catapult and Zone 3 and Prism International. Where do you see yourself going? What's your immediate game plan for moving forward?
So my immediate game plan is to hopefully have my novel published in the next couple of years. It's out to the publishers right now. So if you have good vibes, I will take all of them.
Send all the good vibes.
Thank you.
Give us tell us where we can find the stories that you've written.
They're on the Zone 3 website, Catapult website.
Yeah, Catapult website. It's just catapult.com. So
yes, and Cutbank has another one.
And then you just you go to those websites and then just enter in your name, Yuly Restrepo, and it'll bring you right to the story.
Yeah, I don't have a website yet.
You will.
I haven't done that.
You will.
My friends keep telling me to.
Yeah, you do need that.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool to be an internationally published author.
Definitely, yes.
I know that it's so cool that you're part of this collection for Tampa Bay Noir.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Yuly. And is Sarah and Lisa still there? Because I have a question or two from the audience, and then we're going to wrap it up. I don't know.
I think they are.
Okay. So I have a question for Sarah from the audience. It says, how does visual art make you a stronger, more nuanced writer, or vice versa?
It helps me to make connections that I might have made subconsciously but can't verbalize yet. It's just a different mode of understanding, and it also kind of reminds me that when that things sitting side by side have a relationship, and but it's not necessarily something that I can decide. Often it happens accidentally. So it's a really good way to get in touch with my intuition.
Yeah, excellent point. Lisa, I just have a comment from David Warner, who's the editor-in-chief of DuPont Registry, and someone that we both know and love. He said that Red Hunter was his first book by you also, and that he could not put it down.
Oh, that's very sweet. Thank you.
I think that's pretty cool. And I wanted to ask you, with your career and with your life in New York, what brings you to stay here in this area?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story in that I met my husband at Sloppy Joe's in Key West. And I was vacationing. I was living in New York City and working in publishing at the time, and I had just finished my first novel. And he was living in Detroit, and we had this like sort of, it was kind of like a love at first sight sort of Shazam moment.
And
And
Hemingway is on the building.
that's right. And so we just went where where he got the best job, and that happened to be here, and I sold my apartment in Brooklyn Heights, and I was giving myself 1 year to sell the book that I had written and to write another one. And so we came down here, and we just kind of, we got married in Florida, and then, we had our daughter, and then, our daughter became this like, sort of sun-kissed Florida girl, and she's like a sailor, and we had this like really beautiful private school that she attended, like from the time she was 2 until 8th grade, which she just graduated to become a freshman. And it really became about, her life, like her beautiful life in Florida. And, I've actually written every single novel, except for my first one. I've written every single novel of my 18 year Florida.
18, incredible.
Yeah. And so, there's, even though there's always a call for me to be back up north. Most of my family's there, Brooklyn and New York City and New Jersey and all that. So there's always that call back, and we're back there quite a bit. But, I even though I know that, Florida's like kind of a quirky place, and there's a lot of things to, sort of complain about, there's just such like a wild, like savage beauty to it, and there's so many things that we do deeply love about it that, we just kind of have stayed,
I got you.
just that short, 20-year period.
No, I feel you. I'm from New York too, and I feel the exact same way. I really do.
Yeah.
We're very lucky that you're here. So thank you for
so
staying
much.
here with all of us. All right, here's a question for Yuly. When you were growing up in Medellin, were you ever frightened? Did the surroundings scare you, or just, as a child, it was just what you knew and what you were used to? And
I think the answer is both. It was just part of daily life. I mean, when I was a kid, this was when Pablo Escobar, this was like his reign of terror. So there would be like bombings and kidnappings and that kind of stuff. And it was on the news every single day. So you just grew up with it. But of course, it also becomes scary when it starts to affect your own family. And if you are from Medellin, you know someone who has died during that period.
Wow.
So for me,
need for asylum.
Yeah. So for me, it was, I have 3 uncles who were murdered. One of my cousins was murdered, and that was around the time when we decided to leave.
That is awful. I'm so glad, and I know I speak for all of us here on the panel and out there that are your fans, that you are here and
Thank you
among us. So I'm so glad to have you here, and that we get to share your growth and see your talents and read your wonderful work. I did love this story so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I think that's going to do it, you guys. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Cindy.
Stories. I think that was awesome. Make sure that you get in touch with everyone. Make sure that you get a copy of the book, Tampa Bay Noir. You can get it on any one of their websites that we talked about, lisaunger.com/gerard.com. Yuly doesn't have one yet, but you can find her on social media. Oh, and Lee, my wonderful friend, has put everything on one slide. Thank you so much for that. And with that, I'm just going to say, thank you. I mean, that's all I can think to say. And thank you for writing such beautifully dark stories. I loved each and every one of them. And all the best with the book and with the coming books and with your careers in writing. I'm just a big fan.
Thank you, Cindy.
Likewise.
Thanks so much.
Bye, Cindy.
Bye. And that is going to do it for this episode of Beauty in the Burg, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure that you get yourself a copy of Tampa Bay Noir. You will not be sorry. You will not be able to put it down. It's just very cool. And what's especially cool is just recognizing your home in all of these stories. And that's one of my favorite things about it. So thank you so much for tuning in to Beauty in the Burg. And we will see you next time.
Thanks for watching Beauty in the Burg. Join us for our next show on September 24th at 7, right here on Creative Pinellas Facebook Live. For more information on Arts In and all of the resources from Creative Pinellas, visit our website, creativepinellas.org.